one of the most interesting areas for interesting customers is that area in Friuli and in Slovenia and Croatia. Because there's such a mix of influences from Slavic kitchen, Austrian kitchen, German kitchen, Italian kitchen, all on the same menu. It's very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hello and welcome to Book Club with the Italian Wine Podcast. I'm your host, Richard Hough, and I'm delighted that you're joining us as we get between the vines with some of the best wine writing out there. So sit back, pour yourself a glass, and enjoy the show with the Italian Wine Podcast.
This month, our guest is the wine writer and Barolo specialist, Paul Balke, who has written 3 books. The ones that are of particular interest to us on the Italian Wine Podcast are the Piemonte Wine and Travel Atlas and North Adriatic. Hi, Paul. First of all, did I get your pronunciation correctly? Sorry, I should have checked that before we started.
Yes, hello, Richard. Yes, my name is Paul Balke. That's how we say it in my language.
Okay.
And in every language is always different.
Oh, yes, I have that same problem myself here in Italy with my surname.
Yeah.
There's so many variations depending on where you happen to be. So yes, I understand that you grew up in Utecht, where you studied law. In fact, you're our first guest on the book club from the Netherlands. Could you tell us just something then about your personal background? What got you first interested in wine and in Italian wine in particular?
Yes, well, I have in my family, there was sometimes a bottle of wine opened, but there was not really a wine education, not at all. And the idea of my education was not to be in this business, not at all. I was going in a direction to become lawyer. I did not have much affinity with that kind of job, and it's just by chance that my brother came back from South Africa with a bottle of wine and said, shall we do something with that? They would be happy to have an importer. We can help them. And that was the flash that I started to think about wine. I had never thought about it. And I started to study, to go to tastings. And I started to understand that this is a fascinating world.
Okay, so it was South African wine really that sparked your imagination?
Yes. And then 1 month later, just by chance, I was in Brussels and I met a son of a winemaker from France. And he told me a lot. He said, you have to come here and you have to visit me, which I did. Then I got more information. I started to realize that this is a very interesting world. I went to study and I never stopped. I'm still studying.
Yeah. It's a lifelong passion, I suppose. But
Yes.
what is it then about wine that is of most interest to you? Is it the history, the culture, the scientific aspects? What was it that captured your imagination?
It's all together. It's the combination of everything. It's not the only thing is that you are sitting with friends and enjoying a wine.
Which is nice.
Of course, that's always interesting. But it's a world that is very rich and has a lot to tell. It's a way to discover countries, to meet people in many countries in the world. It's the combination of wine and history and culture. And it's the scientific aspect, which interests me too. It is all together. And it makes that you have never a boring day.
Yeah. And we met Paul very briefly earlier this year at Vin Italy. So your interest in wine, from being this passionate, soon became a career as a wine writer and a wine educator and a wine producer, which we'll come on to talk about. But what I'm interested to know is how does this lawyer from Utrecht become a leading expert on Italian wine regions? When did you first become interested in the wine of Italy?
Well, it's by chance. I was not really at the start. I was really focused on France because in the Netherlands, everybody in that period was focused on France. France was the country for wine. There were even people saying the only wine that exists is the wine from France, and there all other liquid is not really wine. There, I think it's a quite arrogant statement, and I don't agree with it now, with my knowledge now. But I have to tell you that at the start, I was not very knowledgeable, and I started to discover the wine regions of France, which I think are very interesting because France is a very important country. Then in 1994, it was the first time I visited Italy, and that was another flash. I was affected by the Italy virus,
Yeah.
and I'm still affected by this.
Yeah. And what was it about Vinitaly in 1994? I'm imagining quite a intoxicating, but also quite chaotic experience back then. What was Vinitaly like back in 1994?
It was not very different from today. It was
Okay.
smaller.
Yeah.
There were not that many halls like today. But the people were very passionate, and they transmitted their passion to me, which they did very well, especially the guys I met from Tuscany. In fact, the first winemakers which I really had a connection and I started to visit were from Tuscany, from Montalcino. I started to understand more about Italy, and I started to understand that I really had missed something.
Yeah. And were you writing about wine at that point as well, or were you importing? What was your activity?
In that period,
Mm-hmm.
no. In 1994, I was just starting my business. It was my business was not really business at that moment. It was more starting like a hobby that becomes more professional and more professional. Every year, a step
Yeah.
up. And then I went to the Chamber of Commerce, got my registration, and I started. It was more or less in this period, but it was also a difficult period because it was not easy to sell wines in the Netherlands because man, it's a very traditional world. And when a young guy comes in this market and shows something, not everybody is open for that, and they have their traditional circuits, and they're sticking to those. So that is about 30 years ago, and in the meantime, this has completely changed. So I was one of the first small importers who are working by themselves with passion, representing some of the smaller wineries that you meet in France, in Portugal, in Italy, etc. Those were the countries I was working with, and it was really difficult. So I only could survive by doing work as pianist,
Yes.
which helped me because I could make a lot of money as pianist.
Okay. I want to ask you about your career as a musician as well as a pianist. But first, I'm also interested, as I mentioned earlier, you're our first guest from the Netherlands. So I thought it would be interesting just to take a little dive into that wine market. And perhaps you can tell us something about how the wine market in the Netherlands has changed in the last 30 years since you've been involved. What are the current trends and current
Yes.
consumer preferences in the wine market, and how have they changed over the years?
Yes, there is a lot of change in the Netherlands. Now, today, you can go around in the towns and meet people of 20 or 25 years old that have already a rather good knowledge of wine. In the past, it was impossible. The people who knew something about wine were the lawyers and the doctors and the notaries who had a cellar under their house, and they had some anchors of Bordeaux, and that was the most important wine in that period. And the real connoisseurs had also some Burgundies, and they had to spend something for that, which was still very few people in the Netherlands who were doing that in that period. The rest was cheap stuff from Germany, France, and Spain, and that's all. It has totally changed. The market has become from very traditional French oriented to very international. You can find everything, every country, every corner in the world is represented now in the Netherlands. And what you see is that France, in certain way, has suffered because the percentage of the dominance of French wines is not anymore there. But the French do not suffer that much because they're still selling more or less the same volumes. It means the consumption of wine is much
Right.
increased. And also the age of people who drink wine has changed because people from 20 years old did start to go to wine tastings and courses. I had the first website on a wine course in the Netherlands in 1999. In that period, it was easy for me to attract people and to give the wine course. In fact, the basis for my success was the wine course because I started to educate people, and people started to see that this is very interesting.
Yeah.
Still, a lot of people in the Netherlands will say that they have really had their first introduction in this world by me, because I did a lot of education. Then 5 years later, there was in 2004, 2005, there was so much concurrence in a short time. It was really a revolution, kind of. There were many websites, and now 20 years later, you can find a wine course and wine education on every corner in the street. So wine has become very popular. It was a fashion. So my activity was one of the first in this market, and now you can see small importers. You can see consulting. You can see people giving consult for investing, for how to organize tastings, a lot. So the market is really, really very different now.
Yeah, that's very interesting, especially what you're saying in relation to younger consumers and increasing knowledge amongst consumers, and consumers having an increased appetite for tastings and getting to know wines from different parts in the world, particularly given that there's a lot of talk in the industry at the moment about a crisis of young people not drinking wine anymore.
Yes, well, I think that a part of this trend is also seen in the Netherlands. It's the young people are very much sensitive for trends. Mm-hmm. And you see this also in the Netherlands, that there is a little bit of a decrease in wine consumption, and they're going to other things.
Yeah,
it's true, but I still think that the wine market is much more mature in general, and the restaurants also are offering a wide range of wines, many different wines, also from smart corners in Italy, etc.
Yeah,
you can really enjoy wine on many places in the Netherlands, and also interesting wine.
Interesting. And what about on the production side, Paul? I was quite surprised when I discovered in preparing for this interview that there are something like 180 commercial vineyards in the Netherlands. So what can you tell us about the emergence or the development of wine production in the Netherlands?
Well, there is absolutely an increase in production too. The same thing what you see with the consumption is also there. People start to have more interest, and the climate is in favor. In the past, we did have wine production also in the Middle Age. We have very old words in our language, like vineyard, which indicate that there has been something with wine in the past too. We know that in the southern part of the Netherlands, between the south of the rivers, there was wine production in the Middle Ages. But probably it was not a very good wine. Probably it was a bit sweet and low alcohol, and that's what it was, probably. Now you can have very good wines near Maastricht. Maastricht is, by the way, interesting because in that area you have a cross-border denomination, the Maas Valley, which is the Ocean Appellation, partly in the Netherlands, partly in Belgium. It's the first in Europe. And when I am going around, especially in the area between Friuli and Slovenia, they don't know it. And there's talks about cross-border denominations. Belgium and the Netherlands have made the first example, and the European Union has given the okay, so that's important, and I think it's interesting. You have in that area hills with very thick layers of chalk, and the white chalk hills in that area are fantastic for creating wine. This is very suitable, and the wines from some producers there are really good now. With the climate conditions of today, you can have interesting wines there.
Wow.
They're even starting with red wines, but I think the best are Müller-Thurgau, some Riesling, and some other grape varieties. And of course, you have a lot of the new PB varieties like Sauvignon Gris, etc. Because still the Netherlands is more humid than many other wine regions. So you need also grape varieties that are more resistant and can plant diseases that are coming up in humid conditions.
Okay, that's interesting. As I said, I was quite surprised to learn that there was such a wealth of commercial vineyards in that part of the world. Is climate change got anything to do with the expansion or the development of wine production in the Netherlands? Does a changing climate make that more viable?
Absolutely, yes, absolutely.
And what about the market for Dutch wine or for wine from the Netherlands? Is that mainly domestic, or are they exporting as well?
Well, I don't think that there is much chance for export.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in the supermarket shelves in Verona, that's for sure.
No, and the Netherlands has 18 million people, and as I told you, the market is quite important. So most of these sellers they can easily sell, and also the Dutch airline, the KLM, did a lot of promotion. They had some of these wines in their business class, and this was very good promotion for the wines.
Yeah. Okay. And next time I fly KLM, I'll keep an eye out for the Dutch wine. Okay. This is the Italian wine podcast. So let's move over then to Italian wine.
Yes.
And I know that you divide your time. You spend a lot of time now in Italy. So which Italian regions or which styles of wine are of most interest to you at the moment?
Well, my in a certain way, my home region, my basis in Italy is Piemonte. I lived there some time, and I know Barolo very well. I've been visiting, I think, almost 150 or 160 cellars in Barolo.
Wow.
I tried also to visit those that you don't find in the international reviews. There are some, and they can still be very interesting. And Piemonte is absolutely a world on its own for wine. It's fantastic what you can find there. And there are still new developments going on now. So I really want to continue following this because otherwise there are new things that you don't know. It's not only Barolo. It's a world of they have 300 different grape varieties growing in the area of Piemonte. And 40 or 50 of them are commercially grown. And it's not only Nebbiolo, it's also Barbera, it's also Freisa. I'm a very much fan of Freisa, and I'm promoting, and I'm not the only one. I'm there in a good team of some of the top Barolo producers who are still continuing and believing in the Freisa grape variety. Freisa was 100 years ago the most important variety from Piemonte. Apart from Piemonte, I know quite well Liguria, which I think is internationally not really followed, and it's a pity because it's a wonderful region for wine. Then you have Valle d'Aosta. Of course, now I know Friuli very well because I wrote my book about that area. And I know Campania very well because I have been working on a book. And the work on the book stopped because I'm not sure if I can make it. But I know Campania very well, and it's one of the most fascinating wine regions in the world. Campania absolutely should be more discovered for wine.
Absolutely. Let's come back to Campania and also to the North Adriatic in a moment, but I think it's a good time just to mention your book, Piemonte Wine and Travel Atlas, which is 256 pages of full-color photos, specially designed maps, texts about wine from the region, its culture, and its history. Do you want to give us a reading, Paul, from Piemonte Wine and Travel Atlas, just to give us a flavour?
Yes. Piemonte has not always been a country of prosperity and well-being, though as throughout the ages the mountains and hills of Piemonte have been the stage for sieges, battles, and even open warfare. And then came the Risorgimento. On a clear day, one can see the Alps from nearly every vineyard in Europe. In Piemonte, the Alps form a natural barrier, not only for the weather, but also for other factors crucial to wine culture, and have helped contribute to the development of the region's own unique identity, which the Piemontese firmly believe in continuing with the production of their own wines from domestic grapes. And this is very important because Piemonte is not the area for Cabernet Merlot Chardonnay, although you can find also that, but it's very much the region that is believing and continuing with their own local grape varieties. And I like that.
Yeah, you paint a very vivid picture of that magnificent and very famous wine region, one that you know intimately through your many visits to the region.
Yes.
Probably a region that is less well known, certainly in an international context, as a wine producing region, is the North Adriatic region, which has been described as Tuscany by the coast. So for our listeners who are not so familiar with that region, could you just tell us what you mean by this area, North Adriatic? Where is it? What's so appealing about it? And what are its flagship wines?
Yes. First of all, you have to understand it. I wrote a book about the northwest of Italy. In fact, my book on Piemonte is covering more or less the northwest. So I thought I'm doing the northeast, and that's Friuli, Friuli Venezia Giulia. When you study Friuli, you will understand that it's everything there is related to some areas that are in Slovenia and in Croatia now, and they're vice versa. So you have to understand the history and the traditions there in the combination. And after a lot of study, I understood that the real region has to be called North Adriatic because it's on the northeast border of the North Adriatic, and it includes all the wine regions in Friuli, starting with Pordenone and the flat areas near Udine, which is called the Friuli Graven. Then you have the other flat areas, Friuli Ania, Friuli Latisana, and Friuli Isonzo in Aquileia. Aquileia, by the way, is very important because it was the fourth important town of the north of the Roman Empire 2,000 years ago. And now it's a village in the flat area not far from Gorizia in the northeast. And it's very interesting. Then you have the hills in the area there. That is Colli Orientali, Collio, and Karst, and which is Karst. In those areas, you find a wealth of interesting wines. Then, when you take the area of Collio, you will understand that there's a border, and that border was created artificially in 1947, and cutting through vineyards, through fields, through houses, and dividing also families. And now there is no border anymore because Schengen came up, and Slovenia is in Schengen, and also Croatia. So the border is not anymore there. But in the period between 1947 and 1991, the soldiers of the Yugoslavia army were patrolling through the vineyards there. Now there is only a peaceful area. It's an interesting story to tell. It was for the local people, it was difficult, it was dramatic. But for us now, understanding how it was and how it is now, it's interesting. So in Slovenia, you have 4 small regions: Brda, Vipava Valley, Slovenian Karst, and Slovenian Istria. And then in Croatia, you have the part of Istria and Wijn. That altogether is the North Adriatic, and it's one of the most fascinating regions in the world.
And also, I think one of the most beautiful. We travelled last summer to Croatia on holiday, driving through Trieste and then down the coast, and I was struck by how beautiful it was. We stopped off in Piran on our way home, and even that is just a small traditional coastal seaside town. Was wonderful. As you say, it's also that complex and intertwined nature of the culture and the history of the region that gives it so much resonance as well. I was struck by the words of Moreno Coronica from the Coronica winery in Istria. And she explained that her grandfather was born an Austrian, her father was born an Italian, she was born a Yugoslavian, and her daughters were born Croatian. So that just gives you a sense of how that particular region it's a real borderland territory that has changed hands so much in recent years.
Well, the history has been dramatic. As you told, the people who were living there, they were living in many countries, and they still continue living in the same house. So every generation got a new passport from a new country. They really hope that for the next 100 generations there will be no more changes.
Yes, we don't want any more new passports, that's for sure.
No, I can understand that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the same thing when you go to a winery, they prefer to not talk about the history, and they prefer to talk about their wine.
Absolutely.
And they are right, because they want to leave the history behind.
Yes, understandably.
I think they are right.
Yeah, absolutely.
The only thing is, I think for us, people from abroad, I think the understanding a bit of the history there it's very important. That's also the reason I wrote my book.
Yeah.
Because when you understand the region, you understand better what happened there, and you understand what contrast is the peaceful area now, and the fantastic wines that they make, and the gastronomy, which is fantastic. You go to Italy for gastronomy, but I think one of the most interesting areas for high gastronomy and interesting gastronomy is that area in Friuli and in Slovenia and Croatia, because there is such a mix of influences from Slavic kitchen, Austrian kitchen, German kitchen, Italian kitchen, all on the same menu. It's very interesting.
Absolutely. Do you want to give us a reading from your book on the North Adriatic, just to give us a flavour? It's a beautifully presented, large, lavish coffee table style publication. So can you give us just a sense of that book?
Yes, well, also here I paid a lot of attention to grape varieties, because also this area, apart from the Chardonnay, the Pinot Gris, etc., they have a lot of grape varieties, and I think it's a part of the wealth of this area. So I wrote this. The rich patrimony of grapes is not only important for preserving biodiversity, it also has high cultural importance. The rich heritage of grape varieties of a territory should be considered as one of its most important cultural treasures. The North Adriatic boasts a great number of varieties, although during the centuries many have been lost. Some of those indigenous varieties may still become important one day in the future. Methods and knowledge of viticulture are advancing, so it's now possible to create interesting wines of some of them. And some producers are doing that. Some markets are keen on wines from original grapes, and there is a fashion for indigenous, which is driving increased interest for the lesser known grape varieties. And that is about the North Adriatic.
Yeah, very interesting. And as I said, it's a beautiful region, and from Verona, just a couple of hours drive in the car, and you're in the heart of that North Adriatic environment.
From Verona to Venice is 1 hour. And many people, maybe also many listeners, go to Venice. But after Venice, where shall you go? I would recommend to do a stop of several days in the North Adriatic and visit Colli Orientali, Collio, Aquilinia, Brda, Karst, Vipava Valley. Go to the village of Vipava and see how the river of the Vipava is coming right from the mountains behind some buildings, and then flows 70 kilometers long through a beautiful valley where they have fantastic little villages. In every village there is a small wine producer family who makes wines from local grapes.
Yeah, very, very good recommendations there. We'll put some details of those specific recommendations in the show notes that accompany the podcast, so our listeners can take a deep dive into those particular recommendations. Another area, Paul, that is of great interest to you, I understand, is around the idea of blending. So could you tell us a bit more about your personal involvement or your personal passion for promoting blended wines, and why you're such an advocate for blended wines?
Well, I want to advocate them because I think they are very interesting. And I think in a part of the wine world, we are at the point of forgetting the importance of these wines. And I consider that a pity. In Italy, but also in Germany, Switzerland, Slovenia, Croatia, and in other countries, many producers of wine are focusing on single grape wines. And they're doing it often very well. And I don't want to criticize that. But when you only produce single variety wines, you lose a part of the interest of wine. Wine of a blend of grape varieties can be highly interesting. And there are several aspects that I want to point out. First of all, when a producer makes a wine of only one variety, sometimes he's obliged to use some additives to create a wine that is easy drinkable in the first years after selling. This is allowed, it's legal. So you come up with a little bit of acidity to add to the wine, or polysaccharide or other stuff. It's all legal. The European Union and all individual countries of wine, they have legal. There are laws about what you can add to a wine. And I say that the best wine is always the wine without all that stuff. And the best wine is the most natural wine. And I want to go for the most natural wine without additives. The only additive that you really have to use, you cannot do without, is sulfite. You have to use it only a little bit, not much. If you work well, you can allow yourself to add only a small amount that's much below the legal limit. But when you make a wine as a blend of several grapes, you can do without all those additives. And that's a very important point. I'm not saying that every producer is always using them, but it happens often.
Yeah, it's very interesting that there was, if I remember correctly, a masterclass at Vinitaly this year that took a number of blended wines from different international regions and contrasted them. A masterclass led by Robert Joseph, if I remember correctly. Multi-vintage blends, that was the concept of this
Yes.
masterclass.
Well, that is again another concept, and it's also a blend, and I think it's okay. I'm not talking about combination of vintages. I think it's partly also about mindset.
Sure.
The producers today, they have a mindset of one grape, and from that grape, I have to do the best to make the best wine.
Yeah.
What you see now is that very often the white wines have a alcohol level that's a bit too high for the market. That's one problem, and they're now seeing the problem. My system of blending is a very good solution. Instead of going to do artificial tricks in getting a lower alcohol wine, why not use old local varieties that can lower a little bit the alcohol and the acidity in the wine, or again add acidity? Very often the producers say, but that grape variety is not interesting, you cannot make good wines from it. Yes, you cannot make good wines when you make a wine from that variety alone. But there are grape varieties that can be very useful. They only should not be used alone. They should be used as 10 or 20% of another wine. And then they can make the wine richer. Also, this is a very good way of preserving varieties and biodiversity, which is also important. I don't believe in vineyards that are covering an entire hill and only one variety. I think it's not the way we should go. I think a hill should not be covered at all with only vineyards. There should be some forest and other plants to have more biodiversity, but also different grape varieties.
Yeah, very interesting.
Then you have also the blends like field blends. That's also okay, but I'm not talking about it. I'm talking about different wines from different grape varieties, blended in a very, how to say in perfect English, doing the highest care you can to try to find a balance between the wines that you have in that vintage. It is a natural product because wine is not mathematics, so you have to blend very carefully according to the acidity of one grape, the alcohol, the glycerin, the substance that you find in the other grape to find the right match. So every year, for example, when you have a wine of 4 grape varieties, every year the percentage of will be in other. To find the balance, you need other balance every year. You see it in Bordeaux. Every chateau in Bordeaux is having other balance between Merlot and Cabernet each year. And I think that's great, and I think that's a great example of how to blend. And I think in France there are many examples of people who are really doing it very well. Also, for example, when you go to the Languedoc, Rhône, Provence, when young winemakers of 20, 25 years old, they are going out in the weekend, they have gone to their cellar and they have made a new blend. And they are with then 10 guys, and every guy has made a new blend just to see what you can make and how it works. Because they already know that when there is 1% difference here and there, the wine changes. So it's an art. And I remember that I produced my wine with a producer in Puglia. It's of 5 grape varieties. This winery always produced these grape varieties. They never had the idea to make a blend of it. So it's Negro Amaro, it's Primitivo, it's Nero di Troia, it's Malvasia Nera, and Susamaniello. And he makes really great wines of each individual variety. So they are worth seeking out. And then we were sitting at the table and finding a blend. And we learned a lot from it. And he was there, his brother, his enologue, his cellar master, his sommelier. We were sitting, they had never done it. And now they are seeing that this wine is from Puglia It shows the sun, it shows the character of Puglia, and the alcohol level is much lower.
And so that brings us on to this Paul Balke brand of wines that you're now involved very much in the production.
Yeah.
Is that the philosophy then behind this brand? Are you blending local grape varieties to create a wine that represents a particular region?
Yes, because I wanted to show that you can make great wines in Italy when you do the right blend and the correct blend with local varieties. There are many blends which are a blend everywhere in Italy, in Chianti, in Piemonte, and also in South Italy. There are a blend of Sangiovese or Barbera or Nebbiolo with Merlot, with Cabernet, etc. And I did not want to go that way. I wanted to show that when you take a range of local varieties, you can make a very interesting drinkable wine, and it can be a great wine. My wine in Piemonte that's is already sold out now, and I'm looking for a new vintage in a new cellar. It is 40% Nebbiolo, 30 Freisa, 25 Barbera, and 5 Croatina. And it was a wonderful wine, aged 7 months in used oak. It was very rich in taste. It has the character of Piemonte, but it has different taste character and different flavors. And it was very authentic, and it was a wonderful wine.
I would love to get my hand on a bottle of one of your wines, Paul. It sounds like every person's dream, to come from the Netherlands, or in my case, from Scotland, or from wherever, and to start producing your own wine in Italy. But I'm sure that process is not without its challenges. What are some of the challenges or difficulties that you encountered in bringing your wine to market?
Yes, well, the first challenge is financial, because I am not a person with a lot of financial means. So I have not the possibility to have my own vineyards, my own cellar, etc. So I'm very happy that there are very good sellers that are able to work with me. They are open to work with me to make this project work. So at this moment, I made a wine in this style with a seller in Piemonte, and he bottled it, the wine, and produced according to the principles that I wrote down. He was agreeing, and he made the wine. So he is the winemaker. He's the owner of the vineyard, and I cannot say that I'm the winemaker.
Okay.
I'm creating the concept, and I'm creating the idea of the wine. Maybe I'm creating the taste. You could say that he is taste creator, maybe. Somebody in the Netherlands said he is a philosopher of wine. Anyway, or a visionary. But that's what I'm doing. And the winery produces then the wines. And the wine on the back label will always cover also the name and the legal side of the winery. So will always be clear that he is making it. And I want that. I do not want the concept of Kylie Minogue that you have a number in written that's unreadable, where you can eventually check the identity of the winery. That's not my style. I'm working with the winery, and sometimes I present the winery also to the press together with the wineries. They're involved in this.
So we shouldn't compare you to Kylie Minogue, Paul. Is that what you're telling us?
No, she's a better singer than me.
But she can't play the piano.
I don't know.
I don't know either. That's a good question. Can she play the piano?
I don't know.
Who knows? Okay. Another aspect of your work, Paul, is the tours that you organise for wine journalists and wine professionals. Can you talk us through one of those tours? What does that typically involve when you take a group of wine journalists on a tour of a particular wine region?
Well, we are doing now Taurasi. In Taurasi is, in my view, one of the most important wines from Italy. It belongs to be on the same scale as or level as Brunello and Barolo, and I want to try to get there. And I'm working with producers to present the wines to the journalists, so they have to taste the wines. So we organize very professional tastings for the journalists exclusive, and each day I think they had to taste around 40 or 50 samples of this wine. And I may say that most of the producers are happy and are participating. And I get journalists from everywhere, because everybody is interested to discover this new wine, because for many people it's a new wine. It's a very old wine. because the wines from that area were already sold in the 18th century by the Master of Bernardino family, when the wine Barolo did not even exist yet. So the tradition of winemaking in that area, it's very old. But Taurasi still is quite small in production volume, and for some reasons it had not really developed. And I find now that there are at least 40 or 50 labels that are really of very high standards. In the past, some people were saying the quality is not sufficient. I don't agree. There are still everywhere, in every wine region in the world, there are some bottles of wine that are not giving sufficient quality for what you think that they should. But here we are. And the journalists, they did agree. And you can read a lot of publications in many countries now where the press has written about Taurasi. And I think that is very important. I also hear, I'm now in the Netherlands, and I hear that many people are starting to understand Taurasi and they're starting to search for it.
Yeah.
And that is what I want.
Very interesting. And I've seen some interviews, and through your website you can get access to various media related activities surrounding your tours, and they do look very, very interesting and completely fully immersive. You get to see parts of the region and producers that probably you wouldn't otherwise have access to without someone who had intimate local knowledge of the region.
Yes.
What about your writing habits? You are multilingual, I suppose. You speak 7 languages. Is that right?
Well, you can say that every day, more or less, I speak 4 languages. The Slavic language is not really fluent. I understand a little bit, and my Spanish was better in the past. It has been replaced by Italian, but I can understand a little bit Spanish.
So I think by any standard, that's a pretty impressive degree of multilingualism. But your books, the second two anyway, the ones based on Italian wine regions, they're written in English, which obviously is a second language for you. So what are the challenges, or how do you go about writing in English? Do you write first in your native language and then translate? How do you tackle that process?
Yes, mostly, but I have also times that I write directly in English, because English has become so normal language for me. Now we are talking English. It happens so often that it has become a very normal language. I can dream in it. Even if I'm still speaking, and I really know that my English is really not like a native speaker.
Yeah.
Writing is a different discipline. You have to be very careful with what you're writing, and I understand that my writing is still a Dutchman that sometimes is translating his Dutch into English. For the books, I have always had an English reviewer who did the review of all the text for the language.
Yeah.
And I learned that my language is still far from sufficient for really writing well.
Yeah, I think that's quite an honest assessment, isn't it? Because I know from personal experience as learning Italian that I can understand Italian. I also started to dream in Italian some years ago, but I would find it impossible to write a book in Italian, or to even to write an article in Italian. I would find extremely difficult, because the level of fluency required is just at another level. And even if you are as fluent as you obviously are in English, for written English as a non-native speaker, it's still always difficult. But those challenges, as you say, are not insurmountable.
Yeah, I also use some vocabulary systems, Grammarly, and also Google Translate. And they have really been working well, because they are really working better in several languages, especially English and also Italian, and also German, for example, which I also have to write sometimes. And then you can improve your written language also very fast.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a variety of tools, and we shouldn't even mention artificial intelligence as a tool as well. But particularly impressive that you're writing about Italy in English as someone from the Netherlands. So
Yes,
Very impressive.
but I have to tell you that I could never have written this without knowing Italian. I have access
Right.
to a lot of text in Italian and
Yeah.
many important stories and many important knowledge about Italian wine, Italian life and culture is only available in
Yeah,
Italian.
that's a good.
When you don't read them, you can have no access to
Yeah,
them.
that's a good point. Yeah. Okay. And what about reading for pleasure? I know you play the piano for pleasure, but what do you have on your bedside cabinet? What are you reading for pleasure at the moment?
I'm just reading a book by Pascal Mercier, and I like very much Graham Greene. But I have every period I have another writer that I am fond of and I am following, and then next year it will be another one. I always try to continue reading. I love reading.
And what language are you reading in?
Often I try to get it in Dutch because it's easier,
Yeah.
but I easily read novels also in English and also in French and also in German.
Yeah.
Italian, I read several in Italian, but I can read it. Yes.
Yeah. I have to agree. I mean, I moved to Verona 14 years ago, and probably one of the mistakes I made early on was trying to read books in Italian. I thought that would be quite an effective way to learn, but it's quite a frustrating experience. I think if you just want to relax and read for pleasure, to pick up a book in a language that you're not so familiar with is not particularly an enjoyable experience. So when I'm reading for pleasure, I tend to do so in English. When I'm reading for work or for research purposes, then I can do so in Italian. The book I'm reading at the moment is called Normal People by Sally Rooney, and that's a 2018 bestseller that seems to have taken the English-speaking world by storm. It was adapted into a BBC television story as well, and it's basically a coming of age story of this quite unusual Irish couple, a couple of teenagers who grow up together, and the story of their developing relationship. So that's one that I'm enjoying on my bedside cabinet at the moment. What about your future plans? Do you have future tours coming up? Is there another book in the pipeline?
Well, I'm speaking with the authorities in Calabria to see if I can make a book there. And I'm writing actually a book about my personal experiences because I have a lot of personal experience during these years of all my visits to many wine countries. And there have been experiences that have created many interesting stories. So there will be more personal stories, not wine stories, but more like small, short stories. And I would be happy
Excellent.
if I can publish.
And what about tours? Are there upcoming tours that you're organizing?
I am organizing actually now a North Adriatic tour with a group of journalists. Next week I will guide 30 people from the Netherlands in the North Adriatic in Friuli in Slovenia. 2 weeks later I will guide 9 international journalists from all over Europe, again through the North Adriatic, so through Friuli, Collio, Orientali, Isonzo, etc. And then Brda, Vipava, Karst, Istria. So they will visit wine regions in 3 countries, which is absolutely unique for any journalist worldwide. Where will you go for a wine tour and have to visit 3 countries? That is one of the unique aspects of this tour.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Yeah, the geography of these countries, you could probably in a single day cross the border 2 or 3 times, I
Yes.
suppose. Yeah, very interesting. They sound fantastic, I have to say. These highly personalized, immersive tours, they sound a fantastic way to get to know a particular wine region.
Yes.
What about your books and where we can follow you? You've got a website which is extremely interesting. It has a lot of really interesting material that you've written or interviews that you've participated in. That's Paul Balke with an E.com. But where can we follow you? Where can we buy or get hold of your books?
You can follow me on social media, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram. You can follow me. There is some of my music on YouTube. I'm very happy to say that my books are available. My North Adriatic books available through the Académie du Vin library. They're starting to sell my book, and I'm very happy with that.
Yeah, it's a fantastic selection of books that the Academy Duveen Library has. So yeah, we'll put links to your social media accounts and to the outlets where we can get hold of your books on our show notes for this episode. Paul, thanks very much for being my guest today. It's been really interesting, and I particularly enjoyed hearing about not just about your knowledge of Italian wine, but for me it's been very interesting learning something about wine in the Netherlands, both the consumption and production. So thank you very much for your time this morning.
Yes, Richard's very, very happy. Thank you very much.
And have a fantastic summer. And I'll perhaps see you next year at Vinitaly.
Yes, sure.
Thanks for listening today to Book Club on the Italian Wine Podcast. Join us again next month where we'll have another fantastic wine writer to chat to and learn from. Thanks again for listening.
Thanks for joining us on Book Club with the Italian Wine Podcast. Tune in again next month when we'll get between the vines with another great wine book. Remember, our show notes, including full details of all the books we've discussed today, are available at italianwinepodcast.com or wherever you get your pods.